So I thought I'd try and distill, or at least look at 3 little points that struck me as maybe core before we get going. I mean, firstly, it's very much a positive thing, which is the breadth of the opportunity. You know, it's not just the movies and telly. On the movie side, I got a real wake-up call to not just the opportunity to sync your music into movies, but to sync your music into movie trailers. Because if you get that, you've done very well. The budgets for trailers are extraordinary. So it's to do with how good your recordings are, how apt your recordings may be to the needs of these people, and how well you present your contact and copyright info. So that's the nuts and bolts stuff.
Well, this is an interesting project for us because it was early on in my career as a self-employed music consultant. And I was very hungry for this work, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why it actually came to us and paid off in the end. At various points in the process, it felt like I was losing the job because other people were coming in and pitching ideas, and the whole thing took so long and was just so convoluted that we had to be very patient to hold on to it. But in the end, they tried to license tracks from various majors, but the tracks weren't really hitting the spot. The director himself was a very friendly guy, and he had quite a clear idea in his head about what he wanted. So we just dug around and we ended up just going down this unsigned route. And this song just seemed to resonate with the director. The client didn't like it, the agency liked it, and the director loved it. Luckily, he had a convincing enough personality to get the client to buy into it.
At the point in which you got to this track, how many tracks would you say that you'd been through in terms of stuff that you'd collected in, stuff that you pitched up the line to the director or to the agency?
Difficult to say, but at least 400 or 500, I would say, probably. I mean, the thing was that even if the track was good, you know, the director would say, "That's a great track, Daniel. We really like it," but the wife of the client's, you know, the CEO doesn't like it. No, and her stepson has got a band, and you know that kept on happening, so it kept on dropping away from us.
Now from London, Rimmel's new Volume Flash Mascara, unique lock and load formula, 5 times bigger lashes, instantly. I don't care for the things you say to me, I'm always wrong.
What was actually interesting about that as well was that that song was written at the end of a recording session in a fairly budget recording studio somewhere in London, and it wasn't a song that the guy had actually written. It was just something that it was so hot in the studio that he was, and he'd been in there for a couple of hours. And he just started going like, down, now, and all that, and the next lyric that isn't on there is, "I just want another cold beer." Right. And that was. He actually released the track afterwards, but it wasn't ever planned. Yeah. Well, the initial fee was back then was around about 60 grand, which is what the agency was prepared to pay for a piece of music, and they didn't really care at the end of the day where it came from. That's what would have been paid to, you know, generally. That would have been divided by 2, obviously for the label and for the publisher. Now the ad went global. So it was played obviously in the UK, US, France, Germany, Spain, you know, even in markets like in the Far East and in Middle East as well. So he wasn't even a member of PRS, and I'd said, "Look, Stephen, you have to join. It's going to cost you a couple £100 or £100 now, whatever it is. You've got to join this because you're going to see money from you know, PRS payments." He didn't even know what that was, so he joined up. Julie joined up, and he got his first statement through, and he couldn't believe it. The first year, I think he made around about 15 grand, and then it got re-licensed again, like 2 more times, globally again. The actual license fee was lower each time, but the broadcast royalties were about the same. We've actually used the blog aggregator called Hype Machine an awful lot, and then that introduces us to blogs which are listed on Hype Machine. So I could type in, you know, I would maybe type in, say, a signed artist like the Hold Steady, for example, and then I would find blogs which have Hold Steady listed there, and then I'd find other artists who are like the Hold Steady because the guy who writes that blog loves bands like Hold Steady, and oh, by the way, here's some new bands you might not have heard of. So we use that a lot. We work with management companies a lot as well. Yeah, MySpace use quite a lot too. Very small fledgling indie labels. I mean, we would go there first of all because we want these guys to make the money, not the majors. In certain cases, there is the inevitable call to Sony or EMI, but wherever we can avoid it, we do. I mean, working with majors is a sort of thankless job, and often the artists who are represented by them don't need the support that a sync will bring, and also the revenue they'll get from that sync will be much less once their label or publisher's taken its cut. I'm a radio presenter on XFM, which is a new music station, but it's a commercial station. But I've always kind of had I tend to do daytime mainstream shows, but I've always been interested in left field music stuff, and the way that I would get this out was by writing this, used to be weekly email, it's now about every 4 months, but where I'd talk about all the bands that I'd been to go and see that I couldn't talk about on air. And various jobs have come off the back of me just doing that every week, which I just did because I was passionate and I wanted to shout about it. For the Inbetweeners, because it's a sitcom, one thing that's really hard to put across to people who are trying to submit music for it is because it's a sitcom, we can't have anything too emotional or too sad, and sad doesn't mean like acoustic guitar, like Kasabian, too emotional, but essentially as few minor chords as possible and fairly upbeat.
Well, the thing about Skins is because there's so many different characters, and it's less of just a comedy. It's like a drama essentially. It allows you to use loads of different types of music, and it's appropriate to do so. So I mean, when I first got the job, jumping on it was quite like intimidating and difficult, but it was just about having an eclectic taste of music and just like feeling the scenes more than anything, and knowing my tunes rather than having a specific thing. So I didn't want to step in there and do a carbon copy of the previous series. Sure. It's all about bringing my own taste to it. One of the most frustrating things about bands is going, we don't sound like anyone, we sound like ourselves. And there are 10,000 million trillion bands out there. That doesn't help me at all. Whereas if you say, we sound a bit like, the Fratellis crossed with Slow Club or something. If bands always hate comparing themselves to things, but it makes it a lot easier for us. And it's so amazing the amount of times because people send me things, I hate people sending me MP3s because it blocks up my inbox. So I always ask for MySpaces. And the amount of people who go, I don't have a MySpace. And that's your shop window. So be on MySpace, be on iTunes, even if it's like one song to give an example. Facebook, you can put tunes up there. Spotify, I know people have different issues with Spotify, but that's how I listen to a lot of new stuff. Even YouTube, you don't have to put the entire song up there to give people an example of it. But don't put obstacles in your way. Make yourselves easy to find. I do have this slightly insane way that I've been told I'm crazy for with sync people, where I go through all the tunes that I think might be appropriate and get hold of instrumentals, and then I'm going to show you this because I was doing this on the plane on the way over here. I get little scraps of A5 paper and I listen to the song and I write down how the song makes me feel. And then I watch the scene and I write down how the scene makes me feel, and then I go through all my scraps of paper trying to find, excited but slightly anticipatory. And then I will send 3 or 4 songs for each scene, somewhere between 4 and 8 songs for each scene, as suggestions, which I then send to the directors and the producers. And those guys mostly are kind of, they like good music when they hear it, but they don't really know anything about new music at all, so they don't really care. They're not going to be like, oh, I don't think Kasabian are cool enough, or I think that band are too cool. They just want stuff that's good and that fits. Yeah, that's another thing I get so frustrated when I find a really great unsigned thing and they don't have the instrumentals, or they say, oh, we'd have to go into the studio and re-record it. So always have instrumentals. But something else, actually, not from me, but from artists, friends of mine who I know who've done well with getting music into adverts, is part of the problem when you have an instrumental. There's so many songs that people think, like Radar Detector by Darwin Dees, I was like, this is going to be the new Foundations, it's going to be all over the Inbetweeners, but actually, once you take the vocal out, it's a little bit flat. And so I know people who've been successful at getting music into adverts because they've done an instrumental version where they put in another instrument to replace the melody line of the vocal, and been really successful with that. So if you have time, do that as well.